This is a spoiler warning for anyone who hasn't seen this movie yet. So if you haven't seen it, go see it before you continue on. Welcome back to Infinity Nerd. I'm your host, John Haycock, and I'm here with my co host, Mike Smith,
How's it going?
and his wife, Nikki Smith.
Hello.
And we are back to discuss the new anticipated Marvel movie, Shang Chi and the Legend of Ten Rings. Uh, let's just start off with first thoughts.
Well, first it's Shang Chi.
Shang-Chi, whatever. Shang. I'm American. I read how it's spelled.
It's because of Mortal Kombat. I feel like we're all. I always
Yeah.
kept calling it Shang Chi when the promotion was happening until I started hearing it said. First thoughts, ladies first.
I really enjoyed it. I didn't go in with high expectations just because I don't know, I didn't know much about it, and so I was a little skeptical on it, I guess. But I really enjoyed it. It was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I was looking forward to it because I felt like it would have a Mortal Kombat kind of vibe to it. Obviously, more PG and more PG-13, more family friendly, and it did have that. But it was very good. I think that and I said this to you before we recorded, that it felt more like a non-superhero film in a superhero universe.
Yeah, definitely.
But it worked because of that, because it wasn't trying to hit it wasn't hitting every box to say this is a superhero film, here's this. And even his outfit, which you see in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler, it's not like a superhero outfit like Iron Man's or Captain America's, where it's like time to suit up. It's just like, I'm wearing this because it's protective, you know. So I liked it a lot. To me, the most important thing is the feeling you get when you walk out of the theater. It doesn't matter if the first half of the movie dragged, it doesn't matter if the first half of the movie sucked, whatever it might be. It's how you feel leaving the movie is the most important part. And so, like, for example, I had mentioned this to you as we were leaving. When we watched Joker, the ending just leaves, like, the whole crowd was almost silence in, like, a weird kind of funk as we were leaving. And it was a packed theater.
Yeah.
And it's because of the way they ended the movie. It was a good movie, but it was one of those I had to really think about for a long time and be like, did I like it or no?
Yeah, I felt the same way.
Feeling you got too.
Yeah,
It was almost like depressing.
It was like a depression kind of feeling it gave you,
Yeah.
and that's not what you want in a movie. But with
But
this,
that was kind of
the point.
The point of him.
Yeah.
His
But
character.
with Shang-Chi, I left the theater saying, I loved that movie. Whereas even the moments in the beginning, first half, I was like, I don't know if I'm liking this. It's good, but I don't know if it's Marvel good.
Yeah, like there's a certain feeling you get when you go see a Marvel movie, or even if you just watch one on TV now, like you get that certain feeling like, okay, this is a sweet, this is a cool superhero movie, and you're expecting all the superhero-esque type of stuff. But with this movie, I think it's cool that, it kind of has an origin story, but not really. Like, it's such a simple story, but there's still so much to it that you don't know, Which I think it makes for a real good screenplay.
Absolutely, I fully agree with that.
But I don't know if we can go any further without spoiling anything, so let's go ahead and get into it. Yeah, so at the beginning, we learn about the Ten Rings, but we don't really know exactly where he got them. Did you ever pick up on that? Because they mentioned it was either a crater or a tomb.
Oh, was a tomb was the other one?
Yeah.
I actually like, and I think it was intentional, why they didn't put it, because at the end credit scene when we see, they're like, there's a beacon, and what's the origin of this thing? I think that it's intentional. Everything Marvel does is intentional at this point.
Yeah.
The fact that they didn't say where they were from wasn't just like the whole Emperor, he's just somehow back kind of thing. It was, there's a reason for this, and I think it's because in the future we're going to learn more about the rings and their origins, and it's going to tie into the second saga a little bit more.
I I wanted to comment a little bit on that because I enjoyed that they were doing their language in the beginning,
Yeah.
but my kids, who are a little younger, weren't able to follow along with the reading. And so that made it a little like distracting a little bit during the movie just because I didn't get to read what was happening because I was focusing on my children over here that couldn't.
They're like, I don't see what's going on.
Because Hayden had a little friend that came with him and he kept saying, I don't know what they're saying. I don't know what they're saying.
And he's loud. He's not coming back. At least not to a movie that matters.
But I don't know. I think they need to remember that this is like a family movie and that little kids won't. I mean, I liked it a lot, but it was really distracting because my kids were not being able to read along.
Well, and I think that, and I've said this before, I think movies that take place in other places should have that. I said, for example, if they were to remake, say, Dracula, and let's say that, well, maybe that's not a good choice, but like if they were doing a classic story and it takes place in, say, Germany, and they film it, don't film it in English. Film it in German and just do subtitles because it gives it more authenticity. Yeah. And the fact that this is one of those, and the CEO, I think, of Disney, or one of the higher ups of Disney, said this is going to be a good experiment or something to that degree. I'm paraphrasing. And Simu Liu, I don't know if that's how you say his name, the main actor, he said, we are not an experiment, like as a Chinese culture, because Black Panther was kind of that. And this is kind of the Asian culture's Black Panther in terms of trying to really explore the culture and its rich history that way. And I think that that's something that really makes this movie even more appealing because it's not the typical, oh, it's just an American movie. It's no, this is a culture movie. And they even got an Asian to direct the film.
Yeah. Oh, did they?
Yeah, just like they had, I believe, an African-American man who directed Black Panther. They wanted to make it as authentic as possible, and I think it really shows through on the movie, in the big screen.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of like that they did it in Chinese. Mm. Chinese, right?
I think it's Mandarin.
That should have been a spoiler right there. I'm the Mandarin because I speak Mandarin.
No, but I kind of like that. Yeah, I like the authenticity about that because I feel like you get more in touch with their culture.
Right.
100%.
Who do you suspect, because they said it was a tomb, who do you suspect had the rings first?
Oh, that's a fantastic question.
Because, I mean, they were already made. And
I'm thinking it's someone in the comics, but from a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, the thing to keep in mind, I think this is kind of important to note in general for people who don't know, the 10 rings aren't actually normally essentially bracelets.
They were on their fingers.
Rings, but they thought it might be
and
too
each
similar.
each ring had a specific power.
Yeah, and so one of the reasons that they changed it is they thought it'd be too similar to the Infinity Stones because it's on the fingers and it has different powers. So they did the bracelet thing, which I actually think looks way cooler than the rings would have. Because he was more of like, from what I understand, I haven't read any comics with the Mandarin, but from what I understand, he was more like the Emperor. And so like each ring had a power, and he was like an older wizard kind of guy. Whereas in this one, he was a badass, which I like this version much better.
Yeah, he was so cool.
As far as who owned it first, I'm sure that you were right, that it'd be someone in the comics. But I actually think its origins are just rumors. I don't think it's a crater necessarily or a tomb. Well, maybe a crater I could see. I think it's out of this world. I really do.
Right.
Because of the fact they brought Captain Marvel at the end.
Oh, maybe.
That was my theory, too.
Yeah,
and the fact that...
And the professor, too, because he's knowledgeable when it comes to the unknown things.
Yeah.
So I think it's alien in origin. But
absolutely, especially... especially since we're getting Eternals next.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
So it could tie up to that.
It could.
Yeah, because it almost seemed like Wong was confused, which I thought was a little weird, and I think I understand this from a contract standpoint. Why wasn't Doctor Strange in that meeting? I mean, it's like his place. He's like the guardian of that place. But yeah, I think it's a contractual thing or a timing thing.
I liked how he was in it, though.
I do think that Wong getting a more spotlight, presence, I think is fantastic. I think the guy who plays him is a great actor. He kills it. But going back to the rings, I do think they're alien in origin. It's still possible that they came down in a crater and whoever had them got them. We'll say Genghis Khan, right? And that's how he was conquering everything. And then something happened. He died. He wanted to be buried because he didn't want anyone. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. But my guess would be someone in the comics, or he did find him in a crater, and that's how. The weird thing is that they let you live forever. Why?
So the Mandarin, I don't remember what his name is in the movie, but or I guess his birth name.
Father. His name's Father.
Dad, I guess, has been around for thousands of years.
Yeah, thousands. I think it was thousands.
At least, I think he was like, I've been around for 10 of your lifetimes, and the guy was old. So I'm going to guess at least 800 to 1,000 years.
And it was, I like that scene though, because he was like, son,
Basically.
like,
That was his Captain America equivalent.
Yeah.
Son, just don't.
just don't.
Yeah, no, that was great. But now it makes me wonder, and we talked about this in the movie, leaving the movie. We're so glad that the rings were not destroyed. I actually expected them to be destroyed at the end of the film,
Yeah.
or buried, or this is not for man to have kind of thing. But he has them, which is going to make him a bigger candidate to be part of the Avengers, which I think he will be. Especially once you see that post-credit scene, it's like, no, he's got to inline with this, because you know how it's like, how are they going to connect with the group? He's already got his in.
I
Yeah.
love how they did the story though, because from the looks of the trailer, I thought he would have had the rings the whole time, like the son.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that, it was his father, and I don't know. Maybe I just missed that part of the trailer, but
Well, here was the thing though, because that scene when they're fighting, and then the rings connect and they're holding each other.
Oh, yeah. Such a cool shot.
I always thought, my theory was, because it was kind of similar to yours, Nikki. I thought instead of the son having the rings himself the entire movie, I thought they both had a set.
oh,
That's an
okay.
interesting thought. See, I actually thought it was exactly what the movie was that he had the 10 rings, and that somehow in the fight, or somehow he lost some of the rings and the son got them to fight him. Because in the comics, my understanding, they're not father and son in the comics. They did that
No, they're not.
for the movie.
It was such a nice.
It was. And their
twist,
fight
though.
scene, holy shit.
It was so
coolest.
good.
So good. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. But with the rings, alien origin is my thoughts. We're going to find out more about them. My question is, what the hell's the beacon? And I know it's getting ahead of ourselves even more, but it's like someone's calling out.
Oh yeah.
Like, who? But the beacon.
The end of the movie, folks.
Well, we're talking about the rings in general, which I think is super important for the future of the MCU. I didn't think they would be. But the post-credit scene makes it very clear that these are very important.
So
So-
let me ask you a question though.
Yeah.
Why is it when the Mandarin, the father, puts on the rings, they're blue, but when Shang Chi puts them on, they turn yellow?
Because
He's
it's easier to
evil.
sell toys.
You think that's honestly true?
No,
I think it
don't.
bases it off of your maybe aura.
I was going to suggest it's like an energy thing.
Yeah.
Like your color of your chi and your energy. And like if you think about it too, it actually kind of fits in my mind, because blue is a very calm color.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very
He is
collected.
pretty calm.
He's like an ocean. He's like, I can run you over, but I don't always have to. He's a very calm guy. But Shang-Chi, he was always like on the run. He's very energetic. He's got a lot of like youthful vigor about him.
Well, he has a lot of war, like
Yeah, he's got
fighting,
confliction
like, yeah.
in himself, whereas the dad is resolute. And it's a very different kind of character. So I think it was for that reason, but mostly too, so that way in the fight, that it felt different. You can see whose rings are whose. And it just looks cooler. It's like lightsabers or Harry Potter, where it's like the wands are green and red. Like, they just want to give it a little bit of something else. Which means, if that's the case, that Doctor Strange is a Hufflepuff. It's all yellow.
But they have to have a reason. Marvel has a reason for every little thing.
I think that one's more just for artistic flair, to be honest. And it could just be, again, based off of the aura, the personality of the individual. And I think it has to do with that, more so than anything. I don't think it ties into anything deeper, like, oh, hey, if you're purple, you're a douchebag. Like, I don't know what it could be. But I think that it's not important to the story necessarily. I think it's just something to add to it.
Yeah. So going back to the Wong conversation,
The wrong conversation?
the Wong,
I heard you, I
Wong.
know.
What's funny though is his character's name is Wong and his real last name is Wong.
Oh yeah, Benedict Wong, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Benedict and Benedict in the same movie. Because Benedict Cumberbatch, yeah.
I got you.
Keeping her up. Yeah, that is interesting. It makes it easier in the movie, I'm sure. Like, hey
Yeah.
Wong, yep, that's me. Um, but yeah, so back to the Wong conversation.
Yeah. So we see him fighting Abomination
Yeah.
when he walks into the fighting thing, and they're like, "Oh no, you're gonna be fighting in the big cage," and then you see Wong and Abomination going at it. But here's the thing, though: Abomination seems more normal because after the fight scene, they walk out together and they're talking and friendly.
Yes, and I think so. They do mention the Abomination in Agents of Shield at some point that he was in some sort of detainment cell, but we don't know if Marvel Studios considers Agents of Shield canon. I personally have been kind of moving further away from that idea, so we don't know where Emil Blonsky has been this whole time.
Yeah.
Because you also got to think it was Ross who basically had control of him in Thunderbolt Ross in Incredible Hulk.
Incredible Hulk, yeah.
I think at this point he somehow is free. Who knows? Maybe the blip made it so he could escape. Like there's less people and he didn't, and he could escape. Whatever. I mean, and then him and Wong somehow cross paths. It seems like they have a friendship.
Yeah.
Because they kind of walked out together, just like, oh yeah, no hard feelings.
That's what he was saying.
So, I think that somehow he just got free. I really do. He does seem different in terms of looks, and that could be more of his Abomination kind of shifting. Who knows?
Yeah,
We don't
like
know.
he looks completely different from the Incredible Hulk movie, and his face, because they do a close up shot on his face when he's in the cage, and he seems more like what Bruce looked like as Professor Hulk. He looked more human, but in a monster's body.
Well, and who knows? He could have had other experiments done to him in the meantime. I think it's less
They
likely.
just well, it would make sense because they did take him away after
Right.
the Hulk beat him.
And with how obsessed that Thunderbolt Ross was about getting that serum, and now that he had the Hulk blood, maybe he did try to pull some of that. I'm sure there's I don't think there's a backstory. I think this is all headcanon kind of stuff, but he got out somehow. Him and Wong are friends, and they fight in the Fight Club together, whether it's for money. What would be the purpose of Wong fighting in the Fight Club?
Getting
Just for fun.
maybe
For what? Sorry, you cut out.
practice. I don't know.
Perhaps.
Trying
Perhaps.
new spells.
Him making him hit himself was fantastic, by the way. I just
Yeah.
wanted to put that out there.
It was so great. You want to see how it feels? It's
Wong
great.
is a cool character.
Yeah.
Back on the I don't know his name. I'm sorry.
Abomination?
Yeah. It could also be, where in Hulk at first he wasn't able to control his emotions. He wasn't able to control his anger, and so maybe now that there's time that's passed, he's been able to also control his emotions and anger to where he's not this evil, let me destroy you. I don't know, just a thought.
He's calmed down. He's like, eh.
No, that makes sense. I wonder if he met with Bruce a few times
yeah,
or something
maybe.
like that.
Yeah.
Help
it's
him
possible.
control it.
Right.
Or maybe Bruce sought him out. Maybe because Wong is
Right.
friends with Bruce. Maybe he's like, hey, this guy's got anger management issues, and I feel like you guys could relate.
Yeah.
Actually,
makes
Abomination's supposed to be in She-Hulk.
Oh, so maybe we'll find more out about him.
Yes.
Okay.
And I actually have a feeling, I'm going to just mention it now, but we'll talk about it in detail later, that She-Hulk takes place before Shang-Chi. Throwing it out there.
Is that your theory or is that what Marvel said?
My theory. But as to why Bruce is human and not Hulk is something that we have to see later that takes place before.
That would
They'll
make sense.
explain it. They always
They
explain.
will. But yeah, so continue. Sorry.
I think one of the best parts was Ben Kingsley's character, for sure.
100%.
Especially when we meet him with that creature,
Yes, Morris. That was his name, right?
Morris. Yeah,
Yes,
I don't know what creature you guys are talking about.
the one that helped him navigate through the field.
Oh,
and it
then
doesn't
he's
have
like-
I
a
had to
face.
go to the restroom.
She did have to go to the rest
So
of that
I
point.
missed that part when they met the little creature. But yeah, I liked how he was able to determine on which direction, and because he's from there,
Yeah,
and so he was able to tell him like where to go, and I thought that was really cool.
I really liked that Trevor was back in general, and I
Oh,
liked
yeah.
that he was different. He wasn't just the same. He was pretty much more
He
or
was
less the same.
hilarious.
it was
He's
pretty
hilarious.
much the same. He realized what he did was wrong
Yeah.
and was like, "That's fine. I'll do my consequence, but I'm still gonna want to act." So
Yes.
he does those performances for the father.
But without him, they wouldn't have gotten through the thing. So
No.
he was
Yeah.
actually crucial and helpful
Yes.
to
They
the
wouldn't
plot.
have been able to make
They wouldn't
it.
have caught it. They
No.
wouldn't have got there in time.
But I think one of the best things about his character is that he was always in role of whatever he was doing.
Yes. And
So
where
like
he's
during the
pretending
battle
dead.
scene, he was all dressed up, and then he was like laying on the ground, and Morris
Yeah.
thought he was dead. And he's like, "Morris, I'm acting.
Play dead.
Now get down here and pretend you're dead."
He just rolls over.
He just rolls
hilarious.
over.
As soon as I saw Trevor on the ground, I'm like, he's faking it. Totally
Oh,
faking
for
it.
sure.
Like it wasn't even a thought. Like they're not gonna kill him off.
There was this girl behind me in the theater. She kept saying like, and I wanted to like tell her, but it was during the movie, so I had to be quiet. But she's like asking her whoever it was that she was with, who is that guy from? What movie is he from? She couldn't place him. And I kept wanting to say Iron Man 3.
Oh
But
man.
I absolutely loved where they were talking about the dad's names that he's had and
Oh, the
how
dinner
he
table, yeah.
mentions the Mandarin. I thought that was a really nice touch because
Mm-hmm.
it made me realize, oh, okay, so he was the actual Mandarin,
Yeah.
and I don't know, I liked how it kind of tied in. to
So
that.
my headcanon, again, I consider headcanon to be like what you say to make it work between two different ideas. So my headcanon for this is that the Mandarin, because he's so to himself and kind of sticks to his own little corner of the world, I think that he became kind of myth and legend. And so I think that the Guy Pearce, what's his character's name?
Aldrin.
Kill it?
What's his
Kill it? Aldrin. Aldrin is correct. Aldrin basically adopted that model, hired Trevor, but basically they thought he never existed. And-
Right. I was thinking the same thing. Like he's just a. He's
Yeah, he
just.
just figured
it
just a legend.
Yeah.
And so, one thing I thought was a little weird, though, if you're trying to be like a hidden army, not that he was necessarily trying to hide, but like the sword guy, Razorblade or whatever his name
Oh,
was,
yeah.
Yeah.
Razor Fist. He had a belt buckle that had the 10 rings on it. It's like, so you're branding your own clothing, or like what? Like, are we hiding? Are we showing? What are we doing?
I really hope that his name is just a little. I don't want to call it an Easter egg, but kind of pointing at the same fact of Taserface. Taserface.
That's a great idea. I think he's a character in the comics, though, and Razor Fist is probably his name. But that's a cool. I like
That's the first thing I thought of when I heard
Yeah. I can see
Razor
that.
Fist.
But back on what you were saying, though, on myth and legend of that,
Yeah.
that's why I really liked the mention of his name Mandarin, because that's what I thought in Iron Man 3, where it was, oh, it must have been just like some myth trying to spook people, that
Yeah.
this isn't real, a real person. And I don't know, I kind of liked how it tied back, saying, no, this was actually me, that was my name, after chicken.
Yeah, they named me after chicken. That's what it was. But I think that, and we're kind of leading into the next topic of the differences between the different Mandarins. Again, I consider there to be 3 Mandarins. There's the fake one. There's the other fake one, who's really an evil guy, which is Aldrin, and then we have the father. The father is definitely my favorite of the 3, not just as an evil guy, but as a character in general. Aldrin was actually a really tragic character if you think about it, because in Iron Man 3, he was this nerdy guy at the beginning who just wanted to create
Oh
and
yeah.
help people, but then he was kind of neglected and he almost wanted to commit suicide, and then he realized that part of the power that he has is his anonymity, and that kind of inspired him. And I guess I read this recently, that in Iron Man 3, almost every version of the script was the real Mandarin. They didn't have it where it was this fake out that a lot of fans didn't even like, but the director was like, well, if you're supposed to be this head of this organization, wouldn't it make more sense to kind of protect yourself that way? And so they kind of put a spin on it at the very last minute. And a lot of fans didn't like that because they were expecting the Mandarin, who's a big character in the comics. And so I love the fact that Marvel's come back and said, we know we messed up. Here's the real Mandarin. And they still tied it in. They didn't say, oh, this didn't happen. No, it happened. And they played it off in a great way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that. Well, I mean, it's either that or they purposely did it, but
Right.
Just
I
so
mean,
they
I
could-
don't think so. I mean, Shang-Chi, I don't think was even a hinted at. Like, a lot of times you'll hear a hint like, oh, we're thinking of doing a Black Widow movie as far back as 2013. I think there were some interviews about it. But we haven't heard anything about Shang-Chi until, like, shortly before they announced it.
well,
At least for me.
they still in Iron Man 3 they have like when Trevor's doing his whole Mandarin thing and he has all the guards next to him. In the background, you see the 10 rings.
Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they had plans to do this movie. I think they were just like... So in the first movie, Jon Favreau of Iron Man, first Iron Man movie, he wanted the Mandarin to be the villain. But they're like, no, let's kind of tone it down a little bit. And so for Jon Favreau, it became more of a, you can't introduce the Emperor from Star Wars from the third movie. You can't introduce him in the first movie. You've got to build up to that. And so it seemed like the third movie was going to be the Mandarin. It seemed like that was kind of the blueprint. And then when they did it, the director was always the Mandarin. And then at the last minute, they said, well, let's switch it up a little bit. And they did the Trevor Slattery thing, which paid off in this movie big time. But then it also led the path for us to get here. So I don't think it was intentional, but I think it was the way they played their cards based off of what they'd done before.
Can we talk about the friend for a sec?
Aquafina?
Yes, Aquafina.
Speaking of everyone,
the
hydrate.
water. I think she did an amazing job. Like her voice is a little different, and so Mike and I were talking about this like after the movie, how he didn't think that maybe she would be a good fit because of kind of her quirkiness. I don't know.
She's always usually like a comedic kind of thing,
Yeah.
and she
Yeah.
did bring that, but in a very subtle way. That
And I like
she was funny
that.
when she needed to be, but she wasn't like trying too hard. And then she had a great arc by the end where she was a fighter. Without her, they actually would have lost.
Well, and she was trying to find who she was. She has a degree and she's working at a car parking. What do they call
Does
that?
she have a degree?
Yeah, she went to college. She had a
cool.
degree.
I'm sure I'm.
Because
And
their
that's why
friend
her
was
mom-
like, you have multiple degrees and you
Yes.
can speak multiple languages.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's why her mom was so strict on like her job and
Yeah.
getting after her all the time.
Not
and,
living up to her potential.
yeah,
And they gave her a good arc as well, like alongside Shang-Chi, where usually the arc is just the hero.
right. But they also show her like actually shooting an arrow and being able to. She was able to find herself in
Yeah.
a stressful time, and I don't know. I really enjoyed that little arc because it kind of allowed her to grow and know what she wanted to do with her life, and I think maybe in the future she won't be parking cars anymore.
Well, she'll have to. I mean, otherwise it'll just be in neutral and going downhill. Especially San Francisco. I mean, come on.
Well, I do like her character arc in the movie, but I can't. I feel like they were kind of doing what they normally do. The best friend becomes the love interest at the very end. I felt like they were trying to do that, and I don't like that idea for him and Aquafina to hook up. I don't know what it is about it, but I just don't think that they go well. I think they should be better as friends.
I don't agree, but that's just because I love a good love story.
I actually agree. So I love the fact because again, Marvel tries to tick all these boxes because the formula works, right? And one of those boxes, specifically with origin movies, typically is a love interest of sorts, and whether they're together, they're not, but there's something there. In this movie, I felt like there was a few moments, like when she saw him with his shirt off for the first time, which you would think she's best friends with for 10 years. They've never gone swimming together. But maybe he wasn't
Well,
that ripped. You know what I mean? Who knows? He wore a bathing suit, like a one piece,
They went karaoke. That's all they did.
and drive cars. But I really think that with Aquafina and him, I love the fact that by the end, they kind of like, she rests her head on his shoulder, like there could be something there, or they're just really tight. It wasn't clear that it was romantic. She might be into him, but sometimes stories and real life, you go through a relationship and realize that you're better off
And
friends.
you go through something traumatic
right
together.
but you realize that you're better off friends, and maybe that's a story for the second movie where they're kind of trying, but it's just not working, or maybe there's a love triangle with a new female character for him, and so then she gets jealous, and he's like, oh, I didn't realize you were into me, and now I'm into you, but now I like her, and then it becomes this whole thing, and then it becomes 90210. But I do think it's great that they didn't push romance too hard in this movie.
Yeah.
It was kind of up in the air, like, are they together? Or not necessarily are they together, but will they get together?
Could they? Yeah.
Could they? I don't want them to. I think that they make a great team as friends, and I think that's how it should be.
Well,
Absolutely.
I like how they made her a part of the team. Like when
Even at the end, yeah.
when Wong came and opened the portal, I didn't expect her to have to go as well. I just thought it was going to be him. And so when
Yeah.
she went with him, I was like, oh, okay. I liked how she's going to be now part of his.
World.
Yeah. And I loved the part on the bus where she's like, who are you?
Yeah.
She actually added so much comedy to the movie and so much life to the movie. She was perfectly cast. And again, when I first heard the casting, I was like, is she a side character? Is she a main character? And I found out she was a main character. I was like, I don't know if I see it because of the traditional Marvel, I don't want to say stereotypes, but like the roles, styles that people play as. But
She did. She nailed
she
it.
nailed it. And what also helped was the fact it wasn't just she was funny the whole movie. She actually had her own arc. I think that's so important that they gave her that because it makes her character grow alongside him. And again, I don't know if I want them together, but I'm sure if they do get together, if they keep the same writing team and the same people, it'll be done really well. I'm really impressed with the team.
But we have a big question.
I may
The
have
postcard. Who sent it
Daddy.
and why?
Daddy sent it.
Well, that was my theory too. Like, it makes more sense that, because he knows exactly where his children are at. So that's why he sent the postcard saying, hey, this is where your sister's at. But if you think about it, on the postcard.
Wasn't her address then? Is that how he found her?
Yeah, it was the Fight Club.
Yeah, it was the Fight Club that she runs.
That's how they
a
got
good
there.
point. Like, as far as she didn't send it, he probably did because he knew where she was. Okay.
And they wanted to trap them both together to get the
that makes perfect
gemstones.
sense.
But
I thought-
here's the.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's no worries. When we see a flashback of him and his mom doing that paper thing and she makes that dragon out of paper, that's what's drawn on the postcard. So, of course, my first thought was the mom.
Yeah, me too.
I thought that too. If she was still alive.
Right.
Especially
Yeah.
once her sister said it wasn't me. It was like, oh, well,
Right.
then it's the mom.
Right. I thought the same thing.
I wonder if there was a deleted scene that actually, like the Mandarin, if it was him, says, that was me, and I happen to know where all my kids are at all times. In that same conversation, or in a different conversation, they're like, did you send the postcard? Because, like, if not, somebody loves me.
I was
Or
kinda
just like
hoping
a-
they, mentioned it though, and they
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah, maybe a deleted scene where he's writing the postcard and you see him do it. I don't know.
Right? Maybe.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of him, if we could touch on him and the mom for a minute,
Oh yeah.
such a beautiful story. Like them doing the fight at the beginning together, but like they're so calm about it, and you could tell there's something there.
What's the power though? Because
I know,
when I
that's
saw the
what
trailer,
Yeah.
when I saw the trailer, I was like, "Is she an airbender?"
Right. No, that was
She has
my
the heart of the
thought
dragon.
as far as Like, how is she doing that?
It
Like,
sounds
Yeah.
like.
she doesn't have the rings.
How does she float? I
Is
mean,
it
it's
like a
a
special
Have you ever seen
planet
Crouching Tiger,
or
Hidden Dragon?
yeah.
They just do it normally. It's just normal.
but on their planet or their what is it? Their
Ooh.
world or
There's sanctuary in a different
yeah.
Oh,
It
like
al-
that
yeah,
dimension
it
or
almost
whatever.
seems like it's a different
But
universe.
it could be that it was like he had gone through a portal without realizing it of sorts, and that you can learn to manipulate it like the Matrix, or
It was a portal.
she
Maybe
mentioned
maybe it was kind of like Wonder Woman,
no. Let's not go there.
because um,
She just knows.
that world
That's
that she's
why
on,
a
nobody
jet.
can see it. Nobody knows
But
where
they're
it's
almost
at.
like a different species. I don't
Yeah.
think that was the case with her. I think they mentioned something along the lines of if you have the heart of the dragon, you have like something. You got something special, like a membership. But I think that her powers came from the dragon because she was almost like a guardian of the. Like it was almost
That
like
would
an
make
outpost.
sense.
That she was almost like a
Considering
guardian.
how the
just out there.
dragon. Yeah,
Well, and that's why they couldn't really live outside. They had to either live in their world or outside of it. They couldn't do both.
Well, I think that was to protect the magical creatures as well as protect the world from the
From
thing
him.
behind the wall.
Well, also him, because they were saying we didn't want you living here.
I think they just sensed the darkness that he had in him.
yeah.
That's let
Right.
go of.
Because what they mentioned is he was like, no, we turned you away because of
Right.
all the things you have done in the past.
Right.
No, and he honestly, I mean, now that we're kind of talking about it, I think that the father, Daddy Mandarin, was so not just well cast but well written. I mean, his story is really tragic. I'm being serious here, Mister. But anyways, yeah. So, but I mean, so he was this evil guy. You know, power. You know, just to quote Shakespeare, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think that's what happened with the rings. He just was
I think
like,
it's
I'm basically a god. So
it's
I'm
the
gonna do
same
what I want.
concept with Schmidt from Captain America and the
Yeah.
Tesseract.
Yeah, you just think you're better than everyone else because technically you are, and so you think you know better, and so you want to, I don't want to say,
Well, and
teach everybody that way, but
how he ended up getting his son involved, it almost seemed like his son was afraid because here he is killing the people that killed his mom and saying blood for blood, or you have to blood for blood, pretty much.
Yeah.
And he was taught at such a young age that in order to, get your peace with this, you have to kill.
Yeah.
And
that violence is the answer to your
yeah,
problems.
I think only reason he even followed his father into those lessons and the teaching of the fighting skills and was because he was afraid. He looked terrified when he killed everyone in that bar and a restaurant.
Yeah.
He looked as though he was almost forced to say, yes, I'll help you, because he was afraid of him. And that's how I took it. But then he realized as he got older that he didn't want that. He didn't want to have to kill in order to fix a problem. And so that's why he ran away and went to that other, where did he go? California?
San Francisco.
So
And then changed his name barely.
To Sean.
that was pretty funny.
Well, I mean, it makes sense to a degree too, because if someone says Shang, he's going to immediately react, just like we were saying before. If you maybe this was before the recording, I don't know. Anyways, but basically, if like you change your name and you're like, oh, like Wong, Benedict Wong, that's what we're talking about. How his name is Wong and his character's name is Wong. So when they say Wong, he instinctually, as a human, hears his name.
React, exactly.
You'll react. So I think the Sean and Sean thing is kind of similar to that. Although it was very funny to be like, if your name's Gina, it's now Gina.
Yeah.
But I think going back to the dad, his story was really sad because so he found these things somehow, the 10 rings, becomes a warlord, and then meets the love of his life, puts away the power, which is a hard thing, I think, for someone
For
to
love.
do. For love. He gave all that up. But then his past caught up with him, and he goes back to what he knew.
Yeah.
And so and it seemed like he wanted his son to almost be like the prince of the throne kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's why he was the way he was with him. And it's because he loved his son. He loved his kids very much. I think so.
Yeah.
But he just taught them the way he knew. You got to think. I think and I don't think this is what they thought of when they wrote it, but we are really who we were as a kid, right? We just layer on the adult parts of ourselves, but we're still that person inside because of all the psychological things that happen to us or the environments that shape us. We're that at our core, right? So the dad, if you think about it, if he's 1,000 years old, he's 1,000 years old in terms of he was a kid at that point. That's his core. And so for him, he knows war. He knows maybe poverty. He doesn't know technology the same way. I'm not saying he didn't learn it, you know what I'm saying? But so when he's trying to discipline his kids, he's disciplining his kids the way maybe his father taught him. Because we tend to parent the way that we were parented in a way.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, we try to do better than our own parents, of course, but we don't know his backstory. But I think he was trying to raise his son to be the heir, although he's immortal. Like, was he just saying eventually, like, I'm gonna get sick of this and just want to like give these up so I can go die in peace?
Yeah.
But also, what was his plan? I mean, so it sounded like when he put away the rings, he was gonna age, right?
Right. Grow old with
Grow
her.
old with her, even though he was in presence. So it makes you wonder how. Also, is he immortal in terms of physically? Can he be like, if he's wearing the rings, someone tries to cut his hand off, does it just bounce off?
No, I think he can still be killed.
But he's just really hard to kill.
Exactly.
And then just immortal in terms of the
So
heart.
he died because he didn't have the rings anymore, right?
Yeah, he gave up
So
the
then
rings
he wouldn't
to
be
save.
immortal without them.
Didn't he give up the rings to basically save his son?
Yes.
Uh,
Pretty much.
I thought he took the rings from his dad.
No, at the very
No,
end,
very
the dad
end.
did this as he was getting grabbed by the soul sucker thing. And Shang Chi got the rings as his dad kind of just looked at him. And I mean, that shows
Almost
how much
like
he
a
loves.
sorry. He looked at
Yeah.
it like, I am so sorry. Because I think he then realized at that point that his mom was gone.
Yeah.
And that this was truly a monster that convinced him that the mom was still alive. And I think at that point, he realized that and he felt so bad for having to drag his kids into this
Darkness.
and this horrible, I don't know, like world or what is the word I'm looking
World.
for?
I think that nails it right on the head.
But I think like you could just see it in his face. Like he was so sorry for the hurt he caused his children.
But he was willing to sacrifice himself, which again I think says how much he loves his children.
Yeah.
And
He just let the evil take over. I think it
Anger.
was the anger. I think it was
The
the
sorrow
anger
and the
that
anger.
really took over his whole persona. Because I mean, think about it. He puts away the rings. His wife dies, and that's what brings out that anger again.
I think it's not just anger; it's mixed with guilt because it's his doings that caused
Yeah,
her
true.
death, essentially. And then he looked at the son. He's like, "Why didn't you do anything?" It's like, shouldn't you be protecting
Well,
us?
he
Like,
was how old?
he was like 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was a fantastic character. I love the way he was written. I am a little sad to see him go. I didn't want him to be a villain necessarily. Like if they were to keep him alive for whatever reason, it's like what can you do with the character? So I do think killing him was the right choice. But just the character was so well written, just all
so
the way
good.
through.
It was so
All the way
good.
through.
Yeah.
And you don't get that with a lot of Marvel films. That's one of the boxes I feel like they haven't quite ticked off in every single movie. Is a great villain that you actually feel for. You know what I mean? That you're like he was looking to save his wife. He's like, my wife's alive. She's over here. Who wouldn't do that? If you lost someone you loved and you had one chance of redeeming
would
or
do
getting him back,
anything.
you would do anything. And he had the power to do anything. So I don't blame him. He's definitely not an anti-hero. He's almost an anti-villain. He's not doing something for the sake of being evil. He's doing the
It's like a great Jedi. I mean, he does do bad things, but he does it for his family and his wife.
What he thinks is right.
Essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, he does what
Because
he
he
thinks
hears
is
that
right.
voice. You know, he hears that voice and he's like, my wife is calling to me. I have to go save her.
Right.
Well, and they used him
But-
as like a villain. They used him as a hero. They used him as a loving father and loving husband. He had every little tick in acting, that you can even possibly imagine in one person. It was just so well done.
I would love to see him come back. Stay with me here. I would love to see him come back in a flashback scene when we finally reveal the origins. Maybe there's a story there.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to be in the movie for a long period of time, but just
Probably
like,
just a scene where we see him getting the
right,
rings.
him getting the rings or something like that, and maybe like a little monologue kind of thing about it, about where they actually came from and all that.
Yeah.
But I think he was great. I could talk about him all day. It seems like. But I think he had a really great arc himself. The villain had a great arc, which you almost never have. You just have, oh, this is why I'm evil, but I'm evil. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in the case of him, it wasn't like that. And even I thought maybe the mom was still alive because that's how convincing he was and how convinced he was. He was so adamant that she was alive. He was seeing her. He was hearing her. So who wouldn't? Again, I don't blame him for trying to open that doorway, because if you had the power to save a loved one that you thought was gone,
That you spent years with.
and the guilt that he had that was his fault, if she's really alive, I'm redeemed.
Right.
If I save her, I'm redeemed. I didn't kill her. Again, and I don't think this is what's going on in his head as a writer. This is this headcanon thing I keep talking about, where it's like this is maybe his motivations. This movie, I think, could seriously be studied in depth, even more than what we'll do
for
in
sure.
our episode. Because
And I'm sure we'll learn more later on within phase 4 or 5.
I want to
Yes.
go see it again.
She never says that about Marvel films. Like usually it's like, oh, we've seen it once. Even unless it's like Endgame or something, we're like, oh, we want to see that again. But this is one of those that I think you could rewatch multiple times. It's going to add new layers. I do love the
learn
fact
new things. Yeah.
that it added mythical creatures to the MCU as a whole,
Yeah.
That was cool.
and that they're basically protected in their own little dimension, which I actually had a
So
story
do you
idea
think
about.
that it's an actual different world, or do you think it's just a different dimension?
I think it's a pocket.
Because they did go through a portal to get there.
I think it's basically, I think it's almost like Themyscira from Wonder Woman, where there's like no man can see the island as they're coming to
yeah,
it.
maybe.
I think it's like that. There's just magic protecting
Yeah,
them, and all the
because
creatures
they
are
did
huddled
have
under this
magical
area.
creatures, and maybe that's what their abilities are. Is magic.
It could just be a spell cast by an ancient or by the dragon himself. The dragon is quite powerful.
And he was part of he was part of their.
Which honestly, going in this movie, if you had told me just by
Culture.
watching the trailer that yes, we see a dragon, but that there'd be this huge fight with a dragon, a demon monster thing.
Well,
like, no.
there's their outfits of dragon. I mean, they based their world on that dragon.
Yeah.
So
Which is kind of weird. It's like, is it his fallen brother or what? We didn't get a name for the dragon, I don't think, either. Just the great protector. I'm wondering if there's a name for him and the villain, or like the real villain, the monster thing in the comics. Okay, Ten Rings being led by the new sister, now incorporating male and females as soldiers.
Yep.
Do we think she's a force for good, evil, or neutral?
I think it'll be good, especially since the whole thing has changed. I think they're going to go on different expeditions, or maybe some people are going to hire them out, or maybe we'll get to see them be involved with the other, kind of like Wakanda. You have Black Panther, but you also get to see the guards fight. You get to see the other clans of Wakanda.
Like the armies of Wakanda?
Right. You get to see all those other people fight. So maybe we'll get to see Shang Chi call her up.
Yeah, in the post-credit scene after you left to go to the bathroom, there was it showed her in charge of the Ten Rings now.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was wondering what you guys were talking
No, I
about.
told you about
I know,
it.
I
but,
forgot.
I think it would be interesting if they actually don't make her good right away. Because if you think about who she was before this movie, essentially, she was running her own underground thing. She was kind of in that seedy part of the world.
Yeah.
I would love to see more of that. And
Yeah, that'd be cool.
She's not evil. She's just powerful.
I wonder if they'll make a series out of that for Disney Plus, because that would be a cool series to watch, in my opinion.
I'm cheating. No, I just want them to focus on like the main stuff. What's leading, like WandaVision. These are main characters. I don't know if I want to do a lot of side stuff. I know they're doing a Wakanda series about something on Disney Plus. But moving on, what's written on the rings, I think, goes back to the origins. We'll find out later.
Yeah, definitely.
I didn't really look at the rings in terms of trying to find any languages on them. And who knows, maybe he
They look like
carved something
symbols,
into them.
though.
Or maybe when he got them, they were belonged to another warlord of some sort.
Yeah.
My biggest thing, and I will kick this off, is why is Bruce not Professor Hulk? I think She-Hulk, which he's confirmed to be in, takes place between Endgame and Shang-Chi, or at least the post-credit scene of Shang-Chi, because who knows how long after that is. And that's when we figure out, because he had like a green, looked like a green watch, like a big green display, almost like an iPhone size. I'm going this way. I meant to go this way. But he's got like a big old green watch. If you watch it carefully, I think he can control it now. And but the question is why? Because he was so happy being Professor Hulk. Now I think he's going to have the sling for the rest of his life. I think is might be how they go. That he's out of the fight. Like he's just a supporting character at this point, which I love that. And She Hulk can step in as our
Yeah.
Hulk of the MCU.
I
So he's been fighting this Hulk plague, whatever you want to call it, most of his adult life, right? We'll say. He found a way to stop doing that.
Do you think though it was because of Thanos destroying everything and he wanted to be able to control it to not let that kind of situation happen again to where he wasn't able to be in control of himself?
No, I think he finally finished doing what he set out to do at the beginning, which was
I don't
getting rid of
think so.
the Hulk problem.
I guess we'll find out in She-Hulk and figure out how he's
that.
controlling everything.
To be honest, but
And who knows? Maybe that is the case. He'll maybe mention more into it as to how he did it, why he did it. But my vote would be no at this point. I don't think it had to do with Thanos because Thanos was dead.
Yeah.
And he can't go back because they didn't think about the time stones at the time. He was just trying
Right,
to
but that's-
move on.
that's kind of what got him there though, was everything that happened, the snap, the destroying of half of the population and losing friends and family, and he didn't want to have to feel that, I don't know, the suffering and the
It didn't
Not-
turn off his human emotions.
No,
it
I
just
know,
he
but-
didn't he wasn't uncontrollable.
I know, but as far as being able to control who he is, to be able to, I don't know, deal with that kind of situation.
I think it's just he was finishing his arc of trying
I get. Well,
Problem.
I'm sure we'll hear some about it in She-Hulk, but
Overall, this movie was great.
Anyway.
What would you guys rank it? Or rate it?
my personal ranking, I would definitely give probably a 9 out of 10. 9 of 10 just because the story was fantastic. It was written really well. The action sequences were awesome. The whole story arc was great. Reason I give it a 9 instead of a 10 out of 10 is because we still don't know a whole lot, and some things did confuse me about, just what we talked about. But
Like why
I
the
mean,
guy
overall,
from New
it was a
York
great
is
movie.
in San Francisco. He was
Yeah.
doing pizza and now he's on YouTube.
yeah,
I'm confused.
What
Sorry,
about you?
I
Is
just
that
said
the guy on the bus?
I was making a joke. I'm sorry. That was rude. I'm sorry. I just
What about you?
What would you rate it, baby?
Either a 9 or a 10.
See, I'm sitting
really
closer
liked
to
it.
it. It's one of those movies that the more I think back on it, the more I like it. You know what I mean? And it's one of those like you walk out of the theater like, probably an 8.0, and then like as you're thinking about it, you're like, I don't know, like the arc of this guy and Aquafina and
Yeah.
Trevor Slattery. I'd probably give it an 8.5. I really think 8.5 because it didn't feel like a Marvel movie, which I think is one of its strengths. But when you go into a Marvel movie, you're thinking like superheroes. Like that's just what it is. And this one didn't feel like a superhero film, but I think that was part of the point.
Yeah.
So I say
think it was
8.5. I think it was a great movie. I think that I don't know. It's really hard to say, but I think the movie was great. I thought the choreography was awesome. The fight between the dad and the son at the end was beautifully done.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and just adding the mythical creatures. Like we saw the dragon in the trailer. I thought maybe it was a dream. I really did. It could be a dream type thing. And then we actually see a dragon fighting. And by the end of the movie, it's a roller coaster. 100%. Loved it. 8.5 at least, I would say. Maybe a 9. I'd give it 8.5. 8.5 is my solid score.
Well, we'd like to know what you guys think, for sure. Let us know what you rate the movie.
Go see the movie again.
Yeah,
I think it's
It's
one
great.
of those. Well, I think because it's such a culture-centered movie, the way that Black Panther is, I think as much support as it can get to really show the movie industry that we want more movies of different cultures, not just American or whatever you want, say. We want other movies. Like look at what Black Panther did. I want this to be just as successful personally
yeah,
because we definitely want a sequel for sure of this movie.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't, there's a lot of unanswered.
Well, that's one of the things I loved about it. But
Yeah, that's all we have for today. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe. Definitely goes out a long way to help out the channel. Let us know what you guys think in the comments. But until next time, nerd on.